Welcome back. So we'll start with the third series in our expected questions of this 20 lectures that we would be covering. In this next two series, we would be focusing exclusively on environment, the major developments. Again to note, we'll be covering the major highlights, not going into individual depth of each and every important current affairs that we would be covering here. So the first one is the High Seas Treaty. Now the Union government gave approval to sign the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement, which is called as the High Sea Treaty, and this would actually lead to implementation of the agreement beyond the authority of a single nation. So typically the national jurisdiction is within the 200 nautical miles, which is the exclusive economic zone. Now what would apply here is the freedom for marine scientific research, polluter pay principle, precautionary principle, ecosystem approach, and principle for common heritage. The idea would be that this would fall under the international treaty established under the UN Convention for Laws of Seas, and this would be the third implementation agreement which was brought in 1994, talking about the mineral resource exploitation and the international seabed area. Now this also includes the areas beyond the national jurisdiction in the high seas, but it excludes warships, military, naval auxiliaries. So what it excludes and what it includes is really important for you to note. Now another important thing is, what are the treaties subject matter committees focusing on? Access and share benefit sharing, capacity building, finance committees, and implementation and compliance. Now there are four important areas: marine genetic resources, area based management tools, EIAs, economic impact assessment, and capacity building. The next thing that we would understand is the urban development and disaster resilience. Now disaster management, disaster resilience has been a very important topic in light of the climate change and its significant impact in terms of floods in some areas, droughts in other areas, higher number and higher frequencies of cyclonic activities. So 30% of the population in India lives in city, and it is expected that this number would go up to 40%. With unplanned urbanization, there has been economic degradation, which includes in poor water quality. One of the recent cases we have seen in Pune with deteriorating water quality and the rising cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome. Now, what are the basic ideas that we focus here? Disaster resilient cities. Now, disaster resilient cities aims to have hazard aware planning and bring in sustainable growth. That means the city must have ample amount of green area and early warning technologies, even to mitigate the disasters and restoration of services. So there are numerous programs under the series of Disaster Management Act 2005 which focuses on national disaster, which actually includes the NDMA, SDMAs, and the NDRF, talking about a comprehensive proactive multi-hazard approach that brings in better technology and better protection. Now, what is important is, under the various government schemes like Amrit, Atal Rejuvenation, which is the Amrit scheme, the Housing for All, Smart City Mission, we are focusing on the cities, making them sustainable, making them livable. The union budget has also proposed the idea for electric buses in cities and allocated 1300 crores for the same. Now this e-bus would be an economical friendly option. Again, 65% of the cities lack a basic plan, which in terms we could say is a basic urban development plan. There are flaws in the existing city, and rather than having a planned development in the suburbs, even the suburbs are sprawling. So that again creates the urban heat effect and creates problems related to urban heat effect. So that we have covered separately in our geography optional. So if you want to go into detail, you can refer that. Landslides, which is the mass movement of the material, it could be in the form of the flow, the slide. So there are various ways under which we describe the mechanism of landslide, but the idea is, according to India landslide susceptibility mapping, 13% of India is susceptible to landslides and 4.75% is highly susceptible. Now what would happen with the landslide? There would be erosion of the soil. This would lead to loosening of the roots of the plants, leading to lack of vegetation. The landscape would change, ultimately destructing the habitat for the wildlife. Sikkim, Kerala are some of the examples. The recent case of cement factory in Kerala, the Wayanad area landslide, is again very, very important. There have been numerous landslides that are recorded every year in the Himalayan and the Western Ghat area, and the prevention is really important. So the Geological Survey has established a national landslide forecasting center in Kolkata, which talks about prediction capabilities, and you have the Bhusanket web portal, which Bhusankalan mobile app, and which talks about the rapid dissemination of the forecasting of landslides in the respective areas. So people living in the ecological sensitive areas in the 6 states are being restricted with for activities regarding mining, quarrying, large infrastructure projects, and there are certain zoning regulations for building in those areas. Even in the northeast, for example, Aizawl Municipal Corporation has brought in valuable models for landslide prone regions, and tailored approach is specific to specific areas. The next is International Solar Alliance. Now Paraguay entered the International Solar Alliance and has become the 100th member of ISA. Now this was an initiative started by France and India on a collaboration basis. The idea was to lower down the global emissions by more use of solar energy, and as such there would be nearly 43% of the reduction in the global emissions by the end of the decade. That is the plan of the ISA, and International Energy Agency estimates that nearly 2 trillion solar energy investments would be required by 2030. Now, once the solar energy comes in, it would actually have a large scale deployment, job opportunities, it would mobilize investments, and encourage research and development. So, solar energy actually offers a potential renewable form of energy which is more accessible, more versatile, specifically in the regions of tropical countries. Even it is comparable to hydropower or bioenergy, and therefore has better avenues that can be taken into account. The next is a very important bill recently passed, which is known as the Disaster Management Bill 2024, and this was actually a revision of the bill which was brought in 2005. The idea is this bill integrates the disaster management into developmental plans, which are under the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission, to bring in better clarity. So that focuses on, first of all, preparing the plans, expanding the functions of NDMA and SDMA, bringing in the urban local bodies into play, and then mainstreaming the developing plan. But there are certain issues which are mainly because of the financial limitations at the level of the urban local bodies, and then we also understand that there is constitutionality of the bill which is questioned with its with its fall under the entry 23 of the concurrent list of the 7th schedule, which pertains to social security, social insurance, employment and unemployment, while disaster management is not explicitly mentioned in that term, right? The Act of 2005 was in response to the 2004 tsunami that had happened in the regions and affected the regions of Andaman and Nicobar. And thereon, the 2024 bill is a improvement to the 2005 bill that was passed. The next is the renewable sources of energy. Now here, solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, hydropower, and ocean and bioenergy are some of the major forms of energy that we have been focusing on. India has an installed capacity generation for renewable energy, and its share is around 43%, ranking 4th globally in renewable energy. With wind, in wind it's 4th, with solar power it is 5th, and has a huge targets which have been established for their development, right? So these target aims to have a non-fossil fuel energy capacity of 500 gigawatts by 2030, which is a very, very significant numbers, we could say. The next is encouraging the growth in the sectors of renewable energy, which is mainly by the plug and play model, ensuring better infrastructure and statutory clearances that could be brought to mitigate the variabilities strategies which could be seen in the renewable energy, and also we focus on the green energy bonds, upgrading the grid technology. The next is rising levels of seawater. Now, there was a report known as Sea Level Rise Scenario and Indonesian Map for Selected Indian Coastal Cities, which was released by the Center for Study of Science Policy, Technology and Policy, that is CSTEP, and it talks about the changes in the sea level and the inundation in the 15 cities. So the observation talks about in the past 30 years, we have seen record high levels at Mumbai station, Haldia and Vishakhapatnam. Then there are higher levels in Yanam, Mangalore, Vishakhapatnam, Haldia, Panji, Chennai, Paradeep, Puri, Udupi as some of these. Now ocean takes into 90% of the heat which is retained by the accumulation of greenhouse gas, because it is one of the major reservoirs, but this results in rising the temperature and water expansion, melting of the glaciers and the ice caps, and this would be affecting the sea levels and the coastal areas. So some of the major methods that have been brought into effect talks about protection and control guidelines, the coastal vulnerability index to be identified, the role of NDRF, the role of the notification under the coastal regulation zone, the mangrove initiatives which could actually be very successful to actually act as shelter belts to mitigate the coastal erosion. And we have seen how mangroves actually reduce the amount of tidal intensity of waters coming into the coastal areas. And this project is really important, known as MISHTI project, highly important for your prelims as well as your mains optional geography. The next is some of the strategies, naturally we could say, includes oyster beds which could be seen along the coast, which are breakers, sea walls to be constructed, creating dynamic models for storm surge, development of floating cities which have been seen already in Maldives and South Korea, bringing in safety for the community. The next is river linking project. Now the project redirects the water from Vainganga in the Godavari basin to Nalganga in the Purna Tapti region of the Buland district, which is nearly constructing a 426 kilometer link canal, and this is one of the parts of the interlinking of Vainganga Nalganga river project, which is important. Now this would actually help in redistribution of the water, bringing better irrigation, reduce the flood and the drought conditions in the either areas, better hydropower generation, navigation and groundwater recharge. Also we have the Nar Par Girna Valley, which is another project. Now this actually links the Ambika, Auranga, Narpar basins towards the Girna river basin of Tapti, again crossing the regions of Maharashtra. So two important river linking projects in Maharashtra that we have talked about. But again, what is important is the difficulties under this, which includes the obstacles across the states, loss of forest, bilateral challenges, economic, we could say, crunch that could be seen. The next is man-human conflict. Now, man-human conflict has been seen where wolf attacks have been increased significantly, affecting the people in the local villages, and these have been basically seen where what now is required, that there is a biofencing work which could be seen in the hilly areas. Now the ecosystem has been damaged, the crops and the livestock are being damaged, and this affects the wildlife living in the regions which are coming into the urban setups. Now again, there have been cases which have said that possibly there could be some issue of virus that have been percolating among the wolves, which have led to higher attack of the wolves. If we talk about wolves as such, we have two important varieties, the grey wolf and the Himalayan wolf. The characteristics of both of those have been mentioned here. Those would be available in the handouts. You can just go through. And then there is another one, which is the Tibetan wolf, not that popular and listed under the vulnerable, specifically found under the regions of Himalayan belt. The next is Jan Sanchay Jan Bhagidari. Now this was launched in Surat in Gujarat. The idea talks about conserving water by community partnership, constructing nearly 24,000 rainwater harvesting structures with active community participation, called as Jal Sanchay Jan Bhagidari. So Jal Sanchay Jan Bhagidari scheme has been important, and it aims at revival of water bodies, biodiversity, and mitigating the climate change. So local insight and local ideas would foster development in the individual pockets, and this would be beneficial and is part of the Jal Jeevan mission, which is a centralized, demand driven, community driven project. The next is very important, Mission Mausam. Now it has been allocated 2000 crores of budget, and it is an initiative which aims to advance India's weather and climate science by bringing in network of satellites, radars, wind profilers, AI models to enhance weather observation. And IITM Pune, which is the Indian Institute for Tropical Meteorology, aims to test the weather interventions like cloud seeding, the impacts of cloud seeding, and using AI ML models, which is machine learning models, to implement those. So this mission has been implemented with help of three partner institutes: IMD, National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, and IITM, as we already mentioned. So the significance, as we said, is to understand the processes: atmospheric pressure, wind speed, better community resilience, and the last mile information which could be given to the local people. But it does have certain challenges. For example, the IMD currently forecast weather events over a 12 by 12 kilometer area for city levels, which does not have specificities for localized regions or localized information. Similarly, there are 39 Doppler radars, and there are wind profilers which are very, very less in number. India has only 39 Doppler radars, in contrast to China, which has 217 Doppler radars. So again, a huge difference that we can see in this direction. The next is Jal Hi Amrit. Now this is an initiative under the Amrit scheme, that is the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, and aims to ensure pure clean water supply in the urban areas. So water secure cities is the main idea. So what is the processes? There would be ultrafiltration through RO, there would be disinfecting technologies, electrodialysis reversals, and membrane bioreactors, which would be part of it. And Jal Hi Amrit actually talks about bringing in safe drinking water, rating based incentive strategies for water treatment plants, and getting them clean water credits as they proceed. So if we focus on water recycling, reuse, and benefits, they have environmental benefits to maintain the quality and protecting the systems, habitat creation, talking about socio-economic benefits, then the obstacles with water recycling and reuse. India and water recycling reuse has been important because 31% of the households don't have the piped water. There are 67 without piped sewage connection, and 78% of India's water resources actually goes in the irrigation. So the proper allocation and distribution becomes an important aspect. The next we talk about is an important topic, which is hyperlocal weather forecasting. Now this is a system which is called as cause-at flows, which has been introduced to actually understand the hyperlocal data of flood forecasting in the flood prone areas of mainly two river basins, Periyar and Chalakuddi, in the regions of Kerala, and to actually help the local people bring in information about any disaster event that could be seen. So there is a weather information network data, iFlows with Mumbai Flood app, Gram Panchayat level weather forecasting, which come together and bring in detailed information. So cause-at flows is a community sourced impact based flood forecasting and early warning system. It is a project which has been initiated by Equinox, a Kochi based service provider, which focuses on modeling solutions. Now this data actually relies on the data collected by the community members, and this actually goes into the model and brings in data and helps government to address the gaps in the issues. So the obstacles mainly talked about relying on the predictability of the software systems, which is the global forecast system and the weather research forecasting systems, which are now considered as outdated. IMD operates 800 automatic weather systems, but these are below the below the need, which actually is somewhere around 3 lakh ground stations that we need. The next is UNFCCC COP29. So COP29 is the Conference of Parties 29, which is part of the UN Framework on Climate Convention, which took place in Baku, Azerbaijan, and talked about the Baku Climate Unity Pact, which focuses on climate finance, adaptation strategies, the Article 6 implementation, stocktake and enhanced national commitments, and loss and damage of fund operationalization. So the next COP30 aims to be taking place in 2025 November in Belém in Brazil. The challenges in the climate negotiation basically talks about the shortfall in the global investments which are going, which is somewhere from 2.3 to 2.5 trillion for emerging markets. The global stocktake assesses the global progress towards climate objectives and climate goals, and we aim to actually understand the pace of operationalization and postponement in that case. The next is the carbon trading and market. Now this again follows the Article 6 implementation under the Paris Agreement. So there are two approaches, the market based and the non-market based. Market based talks about the carbon tax, cap and trade, baseline and credit scheme. Non-market talks about technology support, voluntary targets, and command and control instruments. So what is really important here to understand the economic efficiency, focusing on mobilizing the financial resources and use of non-market approach, which has been outlined under the carbon control approaches section 6.2, and this focuses on bringing in better developments in the field of carbon market trading. Now the CCTS, which is the Carbon Credit Trading Scheme 2023, established through the Amendment of Energy Conservation 2022, introduced the two important components, the compliance mechanism and the offset mechanism. So compliance talks about the energy intensive industries like fertilizer, iron and steel to meet the government set guidelines for greenhouse gas emissions, and offset mechanism talks about the approach for the entities which are outside the compliance mechanism. And then there is a green credit program, which is a voluntary market based program. Efforts of PAT, which is perform, achieve and trade scheme, are again important. So mechanism under Article 6 focuses on Article 6.2, which mainly talks about the greenhouse gas metrics, the non-greenhouse gas metrics, the policies and the measures, and then Article 6.4, 6.8 are again important. The next is climate finance. Now, under climate finance, which was adopted in 1997, the UN Watercourses Convention aligns with the Indus Water Treaty of 1960. So, the issues of private-public finance and financing innovative methods have been important. So, there is a new collective quantified goal which was proposed under the COP21 that talks about a new climate finance targets for a period post 2025, and these targets have to be achieved and linked to it. So climate finance in India is a really big thing, because India requires a huge cumulative investment of nearly $6 to $8 trillion from 2015 to 2030 for making transformations in its energy system, and the steps mainly involve the funds for climate change, the priority sectors, the green deposits, sustainable finance, talking about greening of finance systems under the NGFS, and then the infrastructural investments. The next one is the UN Water Convention. Now, UN Water Convention is important because recently Ivory Coast, which is one of the important centers, became the signatory of the national water, the UN Water Convention, which is a convention on the protection and use of transboundary water resources and international lakes, protection of water bodies, the sustainable goals, and capacity building for the same. The next is the dual tower solar thermal plant. So China launched its first dual tower solar thermal power plant which has a higher efficiency by 24%, which is again a very important marker. So it actually uses the molten salt storage as a thermal battery, and the surplus heat which is collected during the day would be used for power generation in the night. The next is SITS report on rosewood. Now rosewood's forests are one of the important species in the forest area, and the SITS report has been an important aspect on it. So SITS talks about a specified quantity of specimens from the species under Appendix 1 and 2 and does not negatively impacting it. So rosewood is also known as palisander, and it includes variety of tropical hardwoods, Fabaceae, Leguminaceae family, and there are various species which are part of rosewood. Dalbergia species helps to restore the degraded soil by decomposing the leaves and the litter, which is rich in nitrogen. There are some species which have symbiotic relationships and help conversion of nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, into usable form. And SITS convention, we have already discussed a lot about it in previous sections also. But the 3 appendix of SITS convention, very important. You can again refer the handouts for the same. The next is the State Action Plan on Climate Change. Now this was adopted in 2019 with rising extreme weather events, higher heat waves and record temperatures. So there are 8 national missions which form the core part of it, and then there are respective plans for the various states which are part of it, and there the sectors through which it actually emphasizes is agriculture, water, transport, energy, urban development and forestry. So this was the first edition of the coverage on environment that we have discussed. We would be covering another coverage on environment specifically important for your UPSC as well as your upcoming NET examination. So stay tuned. Please subscribe. Thank you.